Tired of big tech clashing with your Catholic values? Fide Chat is now live on the Apple App Store and Google Play Store. It's private, encrypted, and built by Catholics for Catholics, with features like parental controls and more. Connect securely with family, friends, and groups. Download Fide Chat at fide.email. Technology without compromise.
Rumors can be a destructive thing, especially when it comes to church politics. And there's a rumor that was on its face so absurd, I initially wasn't going to talk about it until I saw people taking it seriously. And this rumor, and it's certainly, almost certainly being misreported by people who are reading into the situation all too much about their own hopes and desires are being sort of wish cast upon the situation. The rumor is this: Cardinal Fernandez has a new document he's going to issue on Marian apparitions, a follow-up to the one he issued last year. It was very troubling. Went over it at the time. It has since enabled a lot of Marian apparitions to be quote-unquote approved, but not ever affirmed as being supernatural in origin. They're just not dangerous for you to believe. And now he's got a follow-up, except that the follow-up, it was reportedly rejected by the Pope. And now people are talking about this as a big clash between Pope Leo XIV and Cardinal Fernandez. And it's a destructive rumor for one reason. I don't know if Leo is going to reappoint Fernandez to his present post at the Dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith. But if he does, people who believed that rumor are going to be sorely disappointed. So we're going to go to the story, and I'm going to purposely use a source here that is extremely pro-Pope Francis. You might be like, well, what's Pope Francis have to do with this? You'll see. And the reason I'm going to show you this is the biggest Pope Francis supporters out there in the media really want people to believe that Francis and Leo are on the same page about most things. There'll be some stylistic differences, but they're on the same page about most things. While we don't know if that's true or not, to their credit, their position is bolstered by the extremely questionable appointments Pope Leo has made so far to various dioceses. And no, he wasn't locked in by decisions made by Pope Francis because he's the Pope. He could have stopped those appointments if he wanted to. Francis's wishes on things that happen after he's gone mean nothing. Same with any other Pope. For this article, for the story, we go to Monday Vatican, which is a very, very progressive Catholic news site. Under the headline, Leo XIV, the quote-unquote suspended documents. Reportedly, Leo didn't like the draft version he saw of the new document that's a follow-up on Marian apparitions. And people are taking this as a categorical rejection by the Pope of Cardinal Fernandez, and he's on his way out the door. Everybody dance and sing Kumbaya. It could be that he didn't like the document because it was missing something. That he had his own thoughts. He wanted some things reworded. Anybody who's ever written a large document that has to go through a review process, whether it's a master's thesis or a book or an article for a journal or anything, knows that the version you submit, the first version of the article you submit, is going to come back with a lot of ink on it for revisions. That doesn't mean there's some clash between you and the review board. It means they wanted you to make some changes. That's all it means. And this is probably the case here. So everybody calm down just a little bit. People really, really want Pope Leo to be different than Francis. And I totally understand why you want that. I want that too. Here's the article from the source who is trying to combat this rumor. In just a little over 100 days since taking office, Pope Leo XIV has met several times with all the heads of the dicasteries. He has approved appointments already in place, messages already in progress, and initiatives now in the final stages. For now, however, there have been no key decisions regarding the heads of dicasteries. 5 are over 75, and Prevost's successor at the dicastery for bishops is still missing. Nor have there been any crucial documents. Leo XIV has not made any really substantial governing decisions. A critical moment will soon arrive, however, when it will be clear how Leo XIV truly intends to govern. and that moment will concern the dicastery for the doctrine of the faith. On July 3rd, Cardinal Victor Manuel Fernandez, prefect of the former Holy Office, announced that the dicastery he leads will soon publish a document on various Marian themes. This document should be considered a sort of follow-up to the new norms on supernatural phenomena published in May 2024. The document is likely to be in the vein that led to the publication in September of 2024 of a note on the supposed apparitions at Medjugorje and the whole Medjugorje experience. With the new norms on supernatural phenomena, May 2024, the dicastery shifted its focus from assessing the supernatural nature of particular phenomena to a pastoral assessment of their impact. For this reason, 6 levels of approval were defined, ranging from a declaration of non-supernatural nature, but never the opposite, to nihil obstat, or the declaration that nothing stands in the way of carrying forward that veneration. I'm going to pause here. The document was very focused on the messages because they were focused on the impact of an alleged Marian apparition on the church. They specifically said grounds for rejection of a Marian apparition will be anything that leads to division in the church. They explicitly said that. If you wonder why I'm laughing when I say that, because under the new norms, the third secret of Fatima would probably never be approved. Now, I don't think it's ever actually been released. I think we got a dud of fake 20 years ago when they tried. But Our Lady of La Salette's message would never have been approved. Neither would have Akita or Fatima or Our Lady of the Good Event of the Purification or any of these other ones that have a sort of doom and gloom, chastisement, and a sort of apocalyptic sounding message to them. They would not have been approved under the new norms that Cardinal Fernandez wrote for Pope Francis. Keep that in mind. You've got a lot of Marian apparitions, alleged ones, that are approved in as much as there's nothing dangerous to faith and morals in them. But they almost universally don't have much warning about corrupt clergy and heresies and things. It should be food for thought, by the way. We go back here. Quote, Fernandez explained that the nihil obstat is a very positive thing, but it doesn't mean that everything that's being said is risk-free. When we look at these phenomena as a whole, we see recurring problems. According to Fernandez, the text that should clarify and balance the issues arising from the investigations is almost ready, but will take several more months for publication. These words must be weighed against persistent rumor that Leo XIV had seen the document and refused to approve it, requesting some substantial changes. This is just a rumor, fueled among others by those seeking signs of an open discontinuity between Pope Francis and Pope Leo XIV. The rumor remains plausible for 2 reasons. First, a document on Marian phenomenon conceived under Pope Francis may not be, in tone, even more than in conclusions, completely in tune with Pope Leo. Now we're going to pause there. They're saying here, and I think this is accurate, that this rumor that they're butting heads is being fueled by people who really want there to be a break between Leo and Francis, meaning that Leo is not continuing the work of Francis. Pope Leo XIV, on the day he stepped out on the loggia and was introduced to the world as the Pope, on May 8th of this year, repeatedly said he's continuing the work of Pope Francis. You should respect the man enough to believe him. Now, what that means, people are going to debate, especially since he hasn't done anything substantial yet. But give him the benefit of the doubt, at least, that he's not lying when he says, when repeats synodality over and over again, that that's what he's doing. This is a rumor being pushed by people who really want there to be a break between Francis and Leo, that the church has turned the page. We shall see. Pope Francis greatly appreciated popular piety. Leo XIV also appreciated popular piety, but it's challenging to imagine Leo XIV openly contradicting the traditions of the church, or even having a document of the doctrine of the faith that openly ensured specific manifestation of faith in an almost prejudicial manner. The document on Mariological questions will therefore be a test. It will be seen whether Cardinal Fernandez, Pope Francis's staunchest supporter and trusted ideologist, will be moved to change the tone and scope of his statements. Pope Francis approved of a type of language that signaled a break with the past, even where this break was perhaps exaggerated or primarily ideological. Leo XIV is not moving in that direction. But Fernandez seems to want to put pressure on Leo XIV to ensure that everything that had been prepared under Pope Francis is published. In January 2025, Fernandez announced that the dicastery was preparing documents on the value of monogamy, the involuntary servitude throughout history, and various forms of it today, the role of women in the church, and indeed some Mariological issues. Nothing more has been said about these other documents. In some cases, we know what the line would have been. On servitude, Fernandez is among those who emphasized that the church endorsed it and only later changed its doctrine. This assertion contradicts historical data. The existence of religious orders like the Mercadians, founded precisely to free people in that situation, and the fact that the political decisions of the papal states cannot be confused with theological positions. Fernandez, however, has stubbornly supported this idea, even expressing it in a press conference during the Synod on the Family in 2014. Regarding the role of women in the church, one might expect a return to the question of deaconesses, a topic on which Pope Francis had established 2 inconclusive commissions. It is thought that a document on the value of monogamy was, of all the documents, the one least open to possible misinterpretation. The possible publication of all these documents and how the language and themes have changed could represent an essential key to understanding how Leo XIV wants to carry forward the pontificate. Indeed, there is certain pressure on Leo XIV to show his hand, and demonstrates whether or not he wants to be in continuity with Francis. And it goes on like that. It's a rumor, not founded on anything solid. People really want to just cut to the chase. They really, really, really want to get to the point of just skip past the finding out stage and just declare him to be Francis II or something else. That's remarkable. I guess it's a slow news month for people, but this thing took off over the last couple of days. I saw this all over social media. For the life of me, I can't figure out why. I take on this question here, the specific question of there being a feud based on a document, is that Leo wanted a revision. And sometimes the revisions are pretty meaty, which would be the feud option. And sometimes it's just maybe he didn't like the tone of the document. Or maybe there were a couple of points that it didn't occur to Fernandez to make that Leo wants in the document. There are a lot of benign reasons for such a document to get heavy revisions. But also go back to that statement where Fernandez said the document's going to take several more months to be ready. It could very well be that there was no rejection of the document at all. There are people with their own agenda. I don't know if it's just to get clicks and headlines. I mean, we live in a time where a lot of people now are watching fake AI YouTube channels that are giving you fake homilies of Pope Leo and cloning his voice and fooling a lot of people into just making up homilies and him saying some wild stuff. If you're ever on YouTube and you see, I think there's a channel called Reason and Tradition. It's all AI. If you're seeing any YouTube channel with like Pope Leo wisdom, Pope Leo words, Pope Leo sermons, those are AI channels. Those are not actually the Pope, and those are not real homilies that he gave. There's even a channel out there pushing AI videos, cloning Bishop Robert Barron's voice and having him say some really wild stuff. I'm not the biggest fan of Bishop Barron. I do respect the man, but I'm not the biggest fan of him. However, if anybody from Word on Fire is watching this right now, I really recommend you file with YouTube a takedown notice on every channel out there that is cloning Bishop Barron's voice and putting words in his mouth. I had somebody send me a link to a video. I don't have it brought up here because I didn't think that I would be talking about this yet, where in this homily that's credited to Bishop Barron using an AI clone of his voice, they have Bishop Barron talking about how you can speak to your dearly departed parents, how you can speak to them. If that sounds like necromancy, that's because it should sound like that. And do you think Robert Barron would do that? No, he would not. Bishop Barron would not do that. And a lot of people watch those videos and they think it's the real thing. Report them to YouTube. They're violating the rules. And that's just one way you get these rumors. But you have people just taking things at face value when the reality is there's probably a more benign answer for why Fernandez has this document that might have been sent back to him by the Pope. Who knows? Maybe the Pope found a bunch of typos in the document. Could be the case. I'm very good at proofreading other people's writing, but I, for the life of me, cannot proofread my own. I sent a document. I remember sending an article to somebody, maybe at Catholic Family News when I was writing for them, and getting it back with a ton of typos that I missed, even though I went over it with a fine tooth comb because I can't proofread myself. This is something to reject when you see it. Just the constant rumor that isn't real. So is there any proof that this is real? No. And don't believe it until it happens. Unlike in this story. I've been talking lately a lot about this problem of the persecution of the church happening in an informal way and in some places formal ways. I have a story for you about a more informal thing. If you've ever spoken to your priest, if you've gotten to know your priest well enough that they can confide in you some things, you might learn that a lot of priests fear for their own safety when they go out in public. If they are identifiable as a Catholic priest, they won't wear their collars, they won't wear a cassock or the Roman business suit, depending on which, way your priest is. They will just wear normal layman's clothes when they go grocery shopping or whatever it is they're doing out in the world. And if you've ever wondered why that is, it's because many of them fear for their safety. Stories abound of priests being accosted in public, spat upon, all sorts of horrible things. And if you don't know why that is, go back 20 years to the McCarrick stories, evil men in the priesthood who should not have been in the priesthood doing evil things to the most young. And the way the media talked about that, combine that with that absolute nonsensical story from Canada, has no bearing in reality. Auditors went in and looked for the graves of the most vulnerable. They found no evidence whatsoever of the heinous claims made by the state and backed up by Pope Francis at the time. And the church paid the consequences for it. The world hates Catholic priests. They're miracle workers. Every Catholic priest is a miracle worker because they can absolve you of your sins in the confessional, and they can turn a simple cardboard tasting host, and they can be the instrument for God to make that the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus Christ. That's a pretty big deal. The world intuitively hates Catholic priests. And being a Catholic priest is increasingly a hazardous job, such as in this story. From the BBC, headline, shock over brutal attack on priest in church. This is one of the more bizarre stories you are going to see. From time to time, we get a story of a priest, someone attempting to accost him in mass. Sometimes somebody tries to interrupt the mass, rushing the altar. It's one of the things your usher's for, by the way, to step in front of somebody like that and stop them. Pray for this priest and pray for the man who did what you're about to hear. These are not easy stories to talk about just because it's so unfathomable to the mind of a Catholic that something like this could happen. A priest is being treated in hospital for a, quote, serious head injury after being hit with a bottle in a church in Downpatrick. Father John Murray was attacked in St. Patrick's Church prior to celebrating Mass at about 10:10 British Standard Time on Sunday. It was going to be his last Mass before retirement. Yes, his final Mass before retiring from public service as a priest. Police said the attack may be connected to the passing of a man in Downpatrick. The Diocese of Down and Connor, which includes St. Patrick's Church, said Father Murray was attacked by a man who had asked him to hear confession. An elderly parishioner who was in the church when the incident occurred said he heard women saying that Father Murray was injured. He said the women would not let him into the sacristy, the room in a church where a priest prepares for service. Then the police arrived, there was commotion, everyone was talking. And then I heard the ambulance arrive. It was mayhem in the church. People were aghast at what happened. The parishioner who said he knows Father Murray well described him as a really brilliant man. Police said a man walked into the church on St. Patrick's Avenue and hit the priest on the head before leaving. The detective said there was a completely shocking and brutal attack and has left the priest with a serious head injury. The priest was taken to the Royal Victoria Hospital in Belfast, where police said he remained in a serious condition. In an update on social media on Sunday evening, the church said Father Murray was receiving excellent medical care, and it was hugely appreciative of all the well wishes and prayers. They canceled Mass until further notice, because of course they did. The priest is generally well liked in his community, but in smaller communities, that's going to be the way it is. Some details that are missing. I'm one of those, when looking at certain kinds of news stories from the UK and even in the United States, if you don't get a physical description of the person who did whatever item is in the news, it's usually because the perp is some sort of person that the world wants to protect the identity of. Whether it's the new Europeans, those who follow the crescent moon typically, or some other group. That's usually what happens. And I'm not saying that this was necessarily the case. It could just be somebody who was mental or had a deep-seated Protestant hatred for Catholic priests. We don't know. But it is unusual that the media didn't give you a physical description of the person behind this. These stories are going to become more common, I think. The esteem of the world towards the church hasn't been non-existent since 2003 or so. And the open hostility towards the church before that. And every opportunity, it seems, secular media brings up McCarrick types and all the rest. This is why it's important for you to pray for your priest. The biggest duty you have, one of the biggest things you can do for your priest, is to pray for him every day. Pray that he has the courage to do his mission, that he has the safety to fulfill his vocation, that he has the fortitude to carry whatever crosses that are unique to priests, especially in a day and age where modern people can't stand the Catholic faith, and that the reputation, the esteem of priests was destroyed over several decades of so-called reforms in the church, but especially by evil deeds committed by evil men who should never have been in the priesthood in the first place. It's going to be a very long time, perhaps long after anybody watching this video or myself are gone from this mortal coil, before priests are generally respected again, if ever again. Our Lord said when he returns, he asked if he will find faith in the world. It wasn't a rhetorical question. He was telling us what he expected. And this is one of those signs that point to it. Pray for that priest. Pray for the man in that story. Because at the end of the day, priests carry such a heavy cross. Most of us cannot fathom it. We cannot wrap our minds around the burden most priests carry. It's one of the reasons why when there's an accusation of McCarrick-type deeds done by a priest, I really don't like reporting on it. I avoid it because often enough, those accusations aren't real. It's only after the adjudication process that I might talk about something. But I'm curious what you think about this story. So let me know in the comments. Are you surprised that a Catholic priest, this happened to him? It probably happens more often than we think. But let me know your thoughts on this in the comments, please. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't. It does help. Sharing this on social media helps enormously too. And as always, pray for the church and everybody we spoke about today. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.